Hey everybody, something that has been coming up in a lot of conversations with clients and friends and different situations, different circles, is how can we change the way that we think? Because oftentimes so many different thoughts come into our minds and we tend to believe them. And it's not always a good thought for us. It could be a critical thought about us, it could be a judgmental thought about another person. And I always get reminded of the quote from Viktor Frankl, who said that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. And I'm paraphrasing his quote. But basically, there's something that happens, something that occurs, and then we can choose how we want to respond to that. Oftentimes, there's a stimulus, then the response right away, right? For example, somebody might say something to us in an angry tone, or it can make us frustrated, or whether it's our kids or a spouse, anybody. And so there's the stimulus, and we can respond in anger and frustration, in whatever ways. But if we take time, right, and we practice that pause between what happens and how we respond, then we get to choose how we want to proceed based on our principles and values, based on who we want to be. And so when something happens, even if a thought comes into our mind, a judgmental thought, a mean thought about ourselves or somebody else, or a hopeless thought about the future and where we're going to be and what's going to happen to us, and maybe it's about a project at work or something that we're trying to accomplish, and we're thinking, what's the point of this anyways? So that's the stimulus, right? That's something that happens, that thought. Then we can respond to it. But if we take a moment and kind of reflect on that thought and think about it first, then we can really decide, do I want to believe that thought? Do I want to accept it for what it is? Or reject it and decide that, no, that's not for me. That's not the way that I think. That's not the way that I believe. That's not the way that I want to be. And so it's so important that we practice that pause when something happens, when a thought comes into our mind, when we find out bad news, when my child drops all the juice all over the floor, which happened today. Let me take a deep breath and just take a minute to decide how I want to respond. In that example with my daughter, I want to be a calm, loving, accepting parent, but also discipline, and also not have that happen again. And so the juice is all over the floor. Take a deep breath, pause, and say something like, okay, the juice is all over the floor now. What do we need to do? Does it belong there? Instead of reacting in such an angry way. So taking a moment to pause and decide how we want to respond. So what can you do today to practice that pause? Deep breathing helps me, as well as asking myself, how do I want to react? What is the way that I want to react? And then it gives me so much power in that moment to actually choose how I want to respond, instead of being I'm forgetting the word, but being a product of whatever happens to me. I get to choose. And there's so much freedom, there's so much power in that. So try that out today and see what you can do to choose to respond instead of to react. And so in a lot of ways, it's being proactive instead of reactive, deciding how I want to respond instead of just responding. And I hope that works out well for you. And I'd love to hear back from you on whether you tried that out and what you saw as the results. Take care. I look forward to speaking to you again. Bye.